I will never understand how you can be completely normal your entire life and then one day just snap and kill your entire family. How you can strangle your pregnant wife and then your kids one by one and then dispose of them in remote oil tanks at your work. One thing about this case that has always stood out to me though is this moment right here. It's when police showed up to search Chris Watts' home for his missing pregnant wife and 2 kids. At this point, he had already killed them and knew exactly what happened to them. But as he's being questioned, this commercial pops up in the background. It was a commercial for American Horror Story which showed a fetus, a woman buried in a shallow grave, and a skull covered in oil at an oil field. I know this is more than likely just a coincidence, but that is exactly how he killed his family. So when it shows up as he is actively being questioned about them is insane, and honestly really creepy. This alone is one of the main reasons I believe in some sort of afterlife, because what are the odds of this happening? It's like someone on the other side was for sure trying to make sure that he got caught. This is the Watts family murders, and trigger warning, because absolutely nothing about this is easy to hear. It's a cautionary tale that I think more people should be aware of, so let's talk about it. This is Chris and Shannan Watts. They grew up in North Carolina and met in 2010, and they very quickly hit it off. Chris seemed like this charming, hardworking guy, and just 2 years later, they were married. By 2015, they moved to Frederick, Colorado, and had 2 beautiful little girls, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, who they called Cece. Chris was working as an oil field operator for a company called Anadarko Petroleum, and Shannan worked from home for Thrive, selling healthcare products and taking care of their 2 little girls. In 2018, they became pregnant with their 3rd child, this time a baby boy who they planned to name Nico. On the outside looking in, they seemed to have a perfect, happy life, but behind closed doors, they had been having relationship and financial problems for years. The Watts had recently filed for bankruptcy and had a lot of debt, and unbeknownst to everyone, Chris had been having an affair with a coworker named Nicole Kessinger. According to Nicole, they really started hanging out and going on extravagant dates in June of 2018, and from her understanding, Chris and Shannan had separated. According to her, she didn't know that he was still married, and no one, and I mean no one, could have expected things to escalate like they did. In the early morning hours of August 13th, 2018, Shannan returned home from a weekend business trip to Arizona. She was driven home by her best friend and coworker, Nicole A. And I want to be clear, this is a different Nicole from Chris's mistress. So Shannan was dropped off at home around 1:48 a.m., and this right here was the very last time she was ever seen alive. The very next morning, Shannan's best friend Nicole immediately felt like something was wrong because Shannan missed a really important OB appointment for her baby. That, and she wasn't answering any of Nicole's calls or texts, which was unusual. But panic really started to set in when that afternoon came and went, and Shannan had missed a business meeting with Nicole. So being an angel of a best friend, Nicole drove over to the Watts family home and started banging on the door, but she got no response. She then called Chris, who was at work, and asked her if he knew where Shannan was. Chris was acting a little off-putting on the phone, but he said that he didn't know where she was, and that's when Nicole ended up reporting Shannan missing to the police. Chris rushed home from work, and at around 2 p.m., he was greeted by police wanting to conduct a welfare check on Shannan. But what Chris told them next really shocked everyone. He said that not only did he not know where his wife was, but he also didn't know where his 2 young daughters were either. He told police that the last time he saw Shannan was at 5:15 the previous morning as he was leaving for work, but now he had no clue where his family was. During this entire interview and the body cam footage, you can see how anxious and panicky Chris looks, all while Shannan's best friend Nicole is kind of side-eyeing him. She knew right away that how he was acting was not normal and a huge red flag, and she had no problem vocalizing this to authorities. But Chris gave investigators and even the FBI, who quickly joined the investigation, permission to search his house. It was an incredibly eerie scene because although there was no sign of a struggle, something in the air just felt off, as if time had frozen still. Investigators found Shannan's purse inside the home with her keys and lupus medication, which is something she really needed and would never leave without. Police then found her phone stuffed between some of the couch cushions in the living room. But what's incredibly eerie and would later become critical in this investigation was that Chris and Shannan's bed just so happened to be missing a fitted bedsheet, and Chris had no explanation for why it was missing either. Sitting on the nightstand was Shannan's wedding ring, and in her garage was her car with both Bella and Cece's car seats still inside. So it became very clear that Shannan had not left the house willingly with the girls, otherwise their car seats would be gone too. It's this moment right here though that really sends chills up my spine and gives me goosebumps. It's body cam footage from when one of the police officers were questioning Chris in his house. In the background is their TV, and on it, a really disturbing commercial plays. This commercial ended up being for American Horror Story, but it showed a fetus, a woman buried in a shallow grave, and a skull covered in oil at an oil field, just like where Chris worked. As Chris is shuffling around becoming more and more antsy, he notices the commercial, and that's when when he said, quote, "Oh yeah, Shannan was pregnant too." End quote. No one knew it at the time, but this commercial was heavily foreshadowing the grim and gruesome reality of what Chris had done to his family. And it's also because of this interview right here that has given so many people trust issues. This is one of the many interviews Chris gave to news stations, standing outside of his house begging for his wife's return. Looking back, his body language is pretty much a dead giveaway that he was involved, and he also refers to his family in past tense too, which is really creepy. He was trying his best to come off as this worried dad who just wanted his family home safe. But it wouldn't be long before this fake concern was ripped away. As Chris was brought in for questioning, police went through his phone records, and it was only then that they discovered that he was having an affair. He never willingly brought this up, but once they found out, this kind of spun the investigation in a whole new direction. Chris confessed to having an affair with his co-worker, Nicole, and although she denied knowing that he was still married, according to him, she knew the whole time. Chris was then given a polygraph test, which he failed horribly. Like, he got one of the lowest scores possible, and then he told investigators that he would finally confess, but only if he could talk to his dad first. So police allowed this, and then came his confession. Chris told police that when Shannan got home from her business trip that morning, he admitted to having an affair and told her that he wanted a divorce. And in a blind rage, Shannan smothered her 2 kids, and then he killed her as justification. He told police that he then disposed of their bodies at the oil field where he worked. Meanwhile, authorities were combing through security footage from his neighbor's house, which painted an entirely different story. In the security footage, you can see Chris loading a gas can into his truck and then backing his truck all the way into his garage, which is something he never did. This is when he loaded Shannan's dead body into the truck, and then his 2 daughters, Bella and Cece, who were still alive at this point, contradicting what he initially told police. Police then gave Chris a photo of the oil field and told him to mark the locations where they would be able to find his family. And this time, he didn't lie. When investigators got to the remote oil field 3 days later, they discovered a gruesome scene. There they found Shannan buried in a shallow grave, and their fitted bedsheet that was missing from the scene nearby. It was determined that she'd been strangled to death, and a DRUG was found in her system. And what I'm about to say next is extremely graphic, so be warned. After Shannan was buried, she had a coffin birth, meaning her fetus, baby Nico, and the placenta had partially come out of her and was buried with her, covered with dirt and sand. A coffin birth is a natural phenomenon where a fetus is expelled from the body of a deceased pregnant woman after her death. This happens due to a buildup of gases inside the decomposing body, which increases pressure on the uterus and pushes the fetus out through the birth canal. It can also occur in a coffin or grave setting, which is where the name comes from. The bodies of Bella and Cece were found next, both submerged in separate crude oil tanks. They had been smothered to death, which we later found out was Chris smothering them with a blanket. Their bodies had been pushed through a hatch at the top of the oil tanks, and each lid was only 8 inches in diameter, so extremely small. This meant that Chris had to physically shove them in hard. This was confirmed via the autopsy, as they both had scrapes all over their bodies from this, as well as chunks of hair on the edge of the hatch. After this discovery, Chris was immediately arrested, and since then he's given many stories as to why he killed his entire family. The one story that is kind of stuck and is probably the closest to the truth is that when Shannan came home that night, he did confront her about the affair and wanting a divorce. Chris said that the DRUG that was found in her system was given to her by him, hoping that it would end the pregnancy so that he could be with his mistress easier. He said that while he was strangling Shannan, it looked like she was praying, and then Bella walked in on him. He told her that her mom was sick, and then he tried to strangle his kids in their own beds, but they kept waking back up. So then he loaded Shannan's body into the truck and then forced her babies to sit right next to her, not in their car seats, as he drove them to the oil field. He made them wait in the car as he buried their mom. And when he came back, he said that he used a blanket to smother Cece to death. When it came to be Bella's turn, she asked, quote, "Is the same thing gonna happen to me as Cece?" End quote. And as he took her life, Chris said that Bella's last words were "Daddy, no," as she begged him not to kill her. She even had defensive wounds on her hands. At 4 years old, that is just devastating. Chris later said that whenever he closes his eyes, he can hear Bella's last words, which I hope haunts him forever. So after Chris confessed, he pleaded guilty to multiple charges of first-degree murder as part of a plea deal to get out of the death penalty. This plea deal was supported by Shannan's family, as they didn't want any more deaths, which I can totally understand. In a split second, they lost one entire family to murder. Chris was instead sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was then transferred to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin for his own safety. I guess he is not well liked in prison. What's gross is that he has a lot of his family's pictures in his cell, so every day he gets to look at the people whose lives he stole. Since his conviction, so many women have sent him fan mail, basically in support of him. They say he's handsome and misunderstood, which makes me question their intelligence and their eyesight. It's disgusting because he not only receives these letters, but he also sends racy letters back to them. It doesn't change the fact that whenever he's interviewed about his family, his eyes turn black. In 2021, some of those letters were leaked to the public, in which he confessed to even more. He said he'd actually planned the murders for weeks. That's just something I will never get. Why not just leave if you are that unhappy? Why kill everyone in the process? He killed his family to be with his mistress, and now he has neither of them. A lot of people question Nicole's involvement and feel that she knows more than she was letting on. Some even think that she was involved in the actual killings. She has always denied this and has since dropped off the face of the earth. But she did say that in the days leading up to the murders, Chris's behavior completely changed. How involved Nicole was, I'm not sure if we will ever truly know. What really gets me is that the kids show Cocomelon, which my kids watch a lot, actually paid tribute to Bella, Cece, and Nico and named some of its characters after them. It is emotional to watch. It is very scary how a seemingly normal man went a good portion of his life acting sane, and in all regards, loving and charming. And then one day out of the blue, he just snapped and committed one of the worst crimes that I have ever heard of. Chris had no previous history of domestic violence or any criminal record at all. In the days leading up to the murders, Shannan told friends that she was having concerns over her marriage and didn't know if Chris still loved her, even though she loved him so much. She felt that something was not right, but she never thought that her life was in danger. So I guess this is a good reminder that domestic violence can happen anywhere, and it's not a matter of if it will escalate to this point, it's a matter of when. Rest in peace, Shannan, Bella, Cece, and Nico. I hope that you guys are all together somewhere, living the life that you deserved here.
My dad.